Welcome into the Blurred Wire. We are discussing Deadpool and Wolverine. Um, I kind of wanted to see this movie twice before I did this, because I'd already seen it once and I've been trying to go see it again and I haven't got a chance to. And I'm like, okay, haven't got a chance to. We can't wait any longer. It's out. It just hit $1 billion at the box office. We
Wow.
have to talk about it. But before we do that, how are you doing, Ty?
I'm
Welcome
doing
in.
I'm doing good. Thank you, Will. I'm doing real good because we got to see this movie together. A buddy cop
Yes.
movie with two buddies.
I literally drove 8 hours from Charlotte just so I could see it with Ty in Florida, all in the same day. I left here at like
Mhm.
11:30 or was it? Was 11 to get to the movie right at 8.
I think we
Uh
talked before you left, and then you
yeah,
left. And then I saw you that night.
and then I walked in the theater right when it was starting.
Mm-hmm.
So of course this is a review, so we're going to talk about what we like and some of the things that maybe we didn't like about this movie, like what holds up and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um And so let's start by diving into what we liked. It was hilarious. Like, it was actually very funny. Like, it made me laugh out loud a lot. Which I've noticed, I feel like is every single year, it's harder and harder to just make a funny movie or a funny project because jokes are getting recycled, things don't hit people as hard as
Mm-hmm.
they used to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the world in general, like in some ways, it's become more cynical. So it's kind of like, how do you get people to take a joke almost seriously, even though it's a joke? I don't know. But I feel like I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed, especially since like 20, like I haven't like hurt myself laughing in a theater since like maybe Guardians of the Galaxy. And maybe with just like action movies. Like I can't really think the last time I saw like a comedy in a theater because most of the time I'll just watch comedies at home. So I think
Right.
that's partially why like usually you go to theaters to see action movies. So like
Mm-hmm.
that partly might be why that's the last one that like really like I hurt from laughing so hard. But it
Right.
kind of feels like since then it's just been harder and harder to make funny movies. So
I think that comedies like really died with the death of, say, like B movies. Like it felt like the as production got more expensive, it felt like there was less room for smaller budget movies, and that's where most of like what I remember as a strong era for comedy being like the
mhm,
90s to early 2000s of when I was growing up. I felt like we got a ton of comedies left and right with big names being attached to them. And we still do get comedies, but it's nowhere near the frequency that we do get them. And because comedy is so subjective, there's so many different tastes when it comes to it, there's less
mhm.
variety for it. So what would before feel like a big, yeah, let's go see the
Mhm.
latest Jonah Hill, comedy movie, if
Yeah.
that's your thing, then it doesn't feel like we get that as much. And so I feel like having a comedy attached to also a big action superhero movie, but it feeling more like a comedy than anything else,
Oh yeah.
uh
Comedy first.
was was refreshing. And I think for me, I for background, I saw the first Deadpool. I never saw the second Deadpool because he's not really a character I really care about.
Yeah.
I haven't really I've heard the justification that he's like in the comics, he's just kind of like a Looney Tunes character come to life as like a superhero or an anti-hero. And I like that as like a premise, but the Ryan Reynolds movies, at least before, never really like grabbed me in any way that was memorable or like I want to see again. But this maybe it was just time, but like the comedy worked for me for the most
Yeah.
part.
I agree. I think the comedy really did work. And I think part of that, like you mentioned, how like B movies with low budgets that are really focused on comedy don't get
Mhm.
made as much. And I think it's because you also kind of have the proliferation of comedy stars that become blockbuster action movie stars. Chris
Mm-hmm.
Pratt became a blockbuster action movie star after being a comedy star in Parks and Rec. And he was in a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of B movie comedy movies, but now that he's become an action star, like to get Chris Pratt in your movie, it's going to cost you a lot of money because he's
Right.
a box office action. Ryan Reynolds used to do,
Mm-hmm.
he was the king of B movie comedies. Like he's done so many, which is partially why he was so good at the comedy on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's also a blockbuster action star. So again,
Right.
that jacks the price up if you want to bring him in. So I think all of that kind of Paul Rudd, is another example. So I think but I think the humor really worked, and I think that's why like the way that people use Deadpool's fourth wall breaking is usually like for humor and for jokes. Like at one point he's like, "Oh, because the giant lair with Cassandra Nova is a giant man skull."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, Paul Rudd finally aged." And like it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because like he'll make these quips that we get as the audience, but no one else in the movie interacts with it. You know what I mean? Like Hugh Jackman's not like Wolverine isn't like, "Who's Paul Rudd?" Like whenever he makes these little fourth wall break jokes or stuff, like he'll make it to
Right.
someone's face too, and they just it doesn't like affect the fabric of the film. You know what I mean? Like no one really interacts with that. Which is like I was kind of hoping they would do that in this one, maybe a little bit. Like have someone be like, "Hey man, who's Paul Rudd?" Or like respond to his fourth wall breaks because they don't do that in the first two. And I was like, that's a way you can kind of keep it going to keep it fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but with all the multiverse stuff and all the cameos, I don't really think they needed to, honestly. I think
Yeah.
it still worked for what it did. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, the humor really worked for me. I'm probably gonna go see it again tonight. And just kind of like I highly recommend just kind of shut your mind off from like Marvel lore and story and just laugh. Just be ready to laugh. The dance at the oh yeah, spoilers.
Spoilers. We did it before we actually
Spoilers.
talked about it this time.
Yes, I don't think we hit spoilers at all because there's going to be cameos. That's not a secret,
Right.
and it's going to be funny. And also, if you haven't seen it by now, what are you doing? So, most people have already seen it by the time this comes out. So, we're going to get heavily into spoilers. If for some reason you haven't seen it yet,
Please
go see
go
it
do it.
tonight. Yeah, and enjoy it. Have some fun. But we are going to get heavily into spoilers.
Mhm.
Okay. The dance at the beginning was hilarious as well. Like dancing the bye 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 while he's just slaughtering these TVA soldiers.
Yeah. With the adamantine skull of
Yeah.
Wolverine.
Like I've watched the bootleg, like people have been uploading bootleg clips left and right, and like I've seen so
Mhm.
many of them doing the dance, and I'm like, it's just too funny. It's very, very Deadpool. And
Yeah.
so I think it's definitely a Deadpool movie. I'm trying to think of what other jokes. I feel like the jokes, some of them stand out, or some of them don't really stand out as much. It's just the whole thing is just very, very funny. And so I think if you've been missing that, I know I've been missing that from theaters. And I feel like movies have been getting progressively less funny, or they've been trying too
Mm.
hard. Like there are a
Mhm.
lot of scenes in Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War that I feel like we're
Mhm.
just trying too hard to be funny.
Yeah.
And this movie doesn't suffer from that. It's effortless, it's easy. Like when Nice Pool is getting shot up towards the very end, and he was like,
Mhm.
"Hey man, how fast do you regenerate?" And he was like, "Regenerate?
Mhm.
What do you mean?" It's like just getting shot relentlessly. Oh, and then like his fourth wall break was pretty funny, and he just looks at the camera and is like, "The proposal." And like that works even better because
It-
that's one of me and my wife's favorite movies. So um it's just funny. It's just funny.
and it felt like it wasn't just us. Like it felt like in the theater, like the audience, like
Oh
everyone
yeah.
else around us, it
Mhm,
felt like it was clicking with
mhm.
everybody. And I've seen similar bootleg clips. It feels like every one of those I see, like it's getting a big laugh. Like
Yeah.
it feels like the public perception of this movie
Oh
has
yeah.
has been equally like this is very funny.
I take that back earlier. I said the last time that like I had really like busted my gut laughing was Guardians of the Galaxy. It was Spider-Man No Way Home. We saw that
Mm,
one together and I
yes.
laughed so hard. I
That
will
movie
say
is,
I did laugh harder than I laughed in Deadpool and Wolverine, but
yeah.
it felt reminiscent of that.
Mhm.
Like it felt like we were because like I said, since then I haven't really laughed. And before that, it felt like things were getting less funny. But I think the Spider-Man franchise with Marvel is a good example of them actually making movies funnier. Um, and so, and I think when you do that, like I said, sometimes you will suffer in other ways, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But for right now, it's like the humor was on point, and that's the thing. If you're gonna make this a comedy movie, give me that and make that on point. Like the whole problem with Thor: Love and
Right.
Thunder, it wasn't funny. So they
Hmm.
took away all this stuff trying to make a funny movie that wasn't funny. None of the jokes landed. So you have nothing. It was just like I'm not even enjoying myself because nothing is funny.
Right.
But this was actually legitimately funny.
I think there's two things that really help with that. Number one is just like the pure, like, I think it achieves its humor. There's a variety of jokes. There are some very like MCU-y jokes that feel like they're trying to be very tongue in cheek at, you know, like, oh, we're doing a thing, and then they do a thing, and that's the whole joke. Which feel very monotonous to me personally, but
Uh-huh.
they also have just really dumb, stupid bits. They have gross out humor. The point I'm making is the variety of types of comedy they lean into feels wider than I was expecting. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is referential, and if you're the target audience that is into comic books, especially like
Oh
the
yeah.
Fox Marvel movies, being like the original, like the X-Men movies, the Fantastic Four movies, even things like Blade or Daredevil or Elektra, all of the Fox owned Marvel movies from the past. It feels like it's tapping into that, but there's so much variety that I feel like it would be hard to not laugh at least once to something here, even if most of the referential humor isn't your cup of tea.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think like it really feels like a comedy first, because it's just
Mm-hmm.
trying to make you laugh under the
Yeah.
guise of a comic book movie. And then number two, the strength of the director, Sean Levy, who has a very extensive history doing the kinds of like B movie comedies that like we grew up with. I was just kind of browsing through, and I had no idea he was the director behind, say, like Just Married with Ashton Kutcher or Cheaper by the Dozen with Steve Martin. He did the Night of the Museum movies. He did the updated Pink Panther movie that came out in the 2000s. He did was it Big Fat Liar with
Oh
Paul
wow.
Giamatti
In
when he gets
2002
when
with
he gets painted blue.
yeah.
Like
Because
he's had a pretty big
yeah.
comedy career, even as recently as Free Guy and
I was gonna say,
the
Free
Adam
Guy to
Project.
me is his funniest movie that I liked. The Adam Project was more heartfelt than it was funny. Like Free Guy actually made me laugh. But he's also done some stuff that was, relatively serious, like Real Steel. And he had worked with Hugh Jackman on that one. And that
Hmm.
one was again very, very heartfelt. It wasn't really a comedy. Um, but yeah, you're right. And I liked how he was able to kind of adjust to the Deadpool and Wolverine humor or
Hmm.
the Deadpool humor because a lot of the movies that he's done, like they're funny, but they don't really lend itself to like Deadpool style of humor. That's like more like rom-com style of humor, and he went
Right.
to the Deadpool side. So you could tell that he was willing to go that route and make it feel like a Deadpool movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean he's had like the family humor, the family dramas, the heartfelt movies, straight up kids movies, but this is definitely a little off brand. It feels like there's like I don't see any real like raunchy comedies, anything
Yeah,
outside of like
exactly.
the for the whole family kind of
Hmm.
range. But it does seem like he's had history working with both Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds in recent years, and so it felt like it paid off. Like it felt like he worked really well with the two principal actors.
Yeah. I kind of thought that Owen Wilson was gonna reprise his role as Mobius, especially
Hmm.
because you got the TVA in there. And Owen Wilson has been in like five different Sean Levy movies. Because what, he was in All the Night in the Museums and The Internship.
Hmm.
But I guess that I think that was another kind of nice fake out that we were all expecting but didn't
Hmm.
get. But it also kind of matched because at the end of Loki season two, he retired. Like he wasn't really part of the TVA anymore. So
Hmm.
it does kind of feel like it makes more sense. Um, Trying to think. So one of the other things that I really liked, that I wasn't expecting,
Hmm.
the cameos felt impactful, and I loved that.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times when movies do cameos or something like that, like the Daredevil cameo and Spider-Man No Way Home, like it was
Hmm.
nice and we clapped, but let's be real, he didn't do anything.
Hmm.
He walked up, said, "You're not going to have any charges." Any other lawyer could have said that,
Hmm.
and then that was it. It was just kind of like, a, hey, here's a moment for you.
But only a really good lawyer could catch that brick.
Oh, yes. Forgot about that. He saved them from a brick, even though Spider-Man was going to catch it himself. So it's like, but every single cameo in this movie had an impact on it, and were at least they were in the movie enough to where I'm like, they're not even really like cameos, they're like actual characters in the movie. I think to me that's the difference between why I like what they did with the cameos. Like they could have had Chris Evans just like die as soon as they saw him in, or had him just like fly by or something like that. But he actually was in multiple scenes. He
Hmm.
explained to them, to Laura. The way he died was, still pretty gruesome and a little unexpected. Uh,
Hmm.
I kind of knew that he was gonna. It kind of felt like, oh hey, he might be in. Like the moment where I was thinking, like he might be in, like maybe he's just in this whole movie, is the moment
Hmm.
when he died. Like
Yeah.
I was starting to think, like, oh my god, Chris Evans
Is
might be in
Chris
this
Evans?
movie as Johnny.
Nope.
And it was like, oh
He's
okay,
he's even the whole dedicated post-credit scene.
yeah,
He is the
exactly.
post-credit scene.
Which was hilarious, by the way. Which I mean, again, a lot of people were hoping for like a more substantial post-credit scene, including myself. But I can't sit there and not be like, yeah, I laughed really hard at it because it was really funny. Um, so yeah, for Chris Evans to, so like that cameo felt like it had an impact. And then of course we have all the cameos that were revealed and weren't revealed. Like we knew Jennifer Garner was going to be in the movie. Um, but we didn't know that Blade, Wesley Snipes' Blade, was going to come back, which was
Hmm.
pretty cool. And like I feel like pretty cool in many ways because apparently he and Ryan Reynolds, like Ryan Reynolds was in Blade 3
Hmm.
and they did not get along on set. So like that's what all the stories say. So for them to
Yeah.
come back together for this movie, also I was kind of waiting for like him to touch on it, like like
Uh-huh.
acknowledge that, like, because again, Deadpool breaks the fourth wall, knows that he is like Ryan Reynolds in a movie,
Hmm.
and he was literally playing a character in Blade's movie. So like again, they didn't really do it that much, which is totally fine. I was just like curious to see like if they're going to do that. Like I would have never thought they would have put Wesley Snipes' Blade in this movie because Ryan Reynolds had been in Blade 3, Blade Trinity, and they didn't get
Right.
along very well. But
Right.
even still, his cameo was impactful for them to make the whole little superhero team at the end. Like he was a character in the movie that actually did stuff.
Hmm.
Same thing for Jennifer Garner's Elektra, which when I saw that movie as a kid, I didn't think it was that bad. And then like growing up, I saw it again and I was like, oh, this is how you don't make movies. But anyway,
Hmm.
then then Daphne Keene's X-23, which I'm surprised that Disney put her in the trailer. Like to me, that was, I don't know. Like I feel like that's almost a mistake on Marvel's part. I know they really wanted to like build hype for the movie, but like
Hmm.
in all the interviews, Daphne Keene straight up lied. Like
She just
when a
said,
lot of
"No, I'm
people,
not in it."
He literally, because they asked her before the Acolyte, they kept asking, like, hey, so are you going to be in Deadpool and Wolverine? There's all these rumors. And she was like, oh, that would have been cool, but no, 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 I'm not in it. And it was like, oh,
Which
okay.
oh, okay.
Like,
Which frankly, I like that. Like
me too.
I wish celebrities would lie more like that
Yes,
because like I it makes it a surprise because
exactly.
I truly thought she wasn't gonna be in it.
So I don't even think that she knew they were going to release the trailer with her in it. Um,
Yeah.
because when it came out, she was like, oh, by the way, I'm in it. Like, I think she expected that to be a surprise. So I think Disney was like, if they ask you, lie. You're not
Right.
gonna find
Just
out
think,
until the movie.
right.
Then it was like, hey, Daphne Keene, are you in the movie? No, I'm not. But the trailer, what trailer?
Right.
The trailer with you talking to Logan? Oh,
Oh, that true.
that's fan
That's
made.
not me.
You know,
That's
AI.
that was yeah, that was a deleted scene from Logan
Yeah,
they
that's right.
reused.
The lead scene from Logan where he's wearing the yellow costume. Yeah, you know how
Right.
people get.
And that was years ago. How old were you then versus now?
So I do really love that because most other actors would just kind of like beat around the bush, like when they were trying to hide the Andrew Garfield and like Tobey Maguire cameos in Spider-Man No Way Home. They were just kind of
Hmm.
like, oh, I don't really know. Like Marvel talked about it, but we'll see. I guess we'll
Hmm.
see. But like Daphne Keane was straight up like, no. Like, oh, it would have been nice, but no. So I really like that. Um,
Yeah.
and what was the other cameo I really liked? Oh, and even seeing Pyro back again, Aaron Stanford's
Mhm.
Pyro was really cool. The thumbs up thing again. I'm trying to count like the characters. Uh,
Right.
having Sabretooth come back
Hmm.
was pretty, but not Liev Schreiber, the one from the first X-Men movies. Because
Right. Not the origins.
yeah, not Wolverine Origins. We also got to see a little glimpse of Toad, which was like, kind of
Hmm.
like a
Got to
um
see his tongue.
and I love that we got to see Channing Tatum as Gambit.
Oh, I love that with the Creole accent
And
and everything.
I don't know if I could have watched that for a whole movie, honestly. Like, I'm not sure
I
if
at least maybe not a serious movie
right,
because to me it
right,
just works as a comedy,
right. Like if I
but
don't think I could have taken
not a good one.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
like
I could not have taken a Gambit movie seriously if this was Channing Tatum's accent
but
throughout the whole movie.
I gotta say, from the comic books I've read that include Gambit, he looked good. Like I've, as much as I really like Gambit as like a character and as a mutant, his face cowl has always been hit or miss in some like issues and stuff, the way it works. And Channing Tatum made it work. Like I thought he looked good in it. I don't know if it's just because it's Channing Tatum or what, but it looked good.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I thought it was, and someone once mentioned, like, I was watching the pitch meeting for Deadpool and Wolverine, and they
Hmm.
were like, yeah, we're gonna bring back Wesley Snipes as Blade, we're gonna bring back Jennifer Garner as Elektra, we're gonna bring Channing Tatum as Gambit, and he was like, did Channing Tatum ever play Gambit? And he was like, no, no, no. But there was like a huge thing where like they were developing a movie for Gambit and like he was
Hmm.
supposed to play. And he was like, so people like know about that? And he was like, well, some people. And he's like, okay, so I guess it'll be really nice for people that follow news stories about Channing Tatum potentially playing Gambit. Like, you know, kind of showing it's a very niche amount of people that are gonna be like, whoa. Uh,
Right. I
but
feel
that
like
was
it's like the Nicolas Cage's Superman thing
right,
from The Flash.
right. And so like this Nicolas Cage's Superman thing, I had to go look that up because I didn't know that, and that was weird to me. And so
Hmm.
and The Flash was so much more of like a serious movie that they couldn't really play it off as a comedy. But in this one, it
Hmm.
worked well because first of all, I did know that that Channing Tatum was in talks to play Gambit, so seeing him get to do it was awesome, and it was funny. Like every time he started talking, I was gonna bust out laughing,
Hmm.
and he actually did stuff. Like he
And he
helped
did.
him
Yeah, I felt like
win.
we even got like like we got, not only was it funny, but I feel like in like the final battle, even though it felt like very small, for all
Hmm.
of these heroes, it felt so good. Like I enjoyed how they used like his kinetic abilities. Like I
Kaboom!
love seeing the play the playing cards, his energized stuff. Like I feel like they did him justice. Like I
I
feel
really
like
do.
it
Hmm.
wasn't just lip service
Right.
or just like a passing joke to include Electra or Wesley Snipes' Blade. It really feels like, and this is kind of coupled with like the actual credit roll at the very end, but it just felt like partially a little send off to all of the Fox properties that
Hmm.
are not part of the MCU, but a lot of us still hold very like dear.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could tell like with the trailers and everything that they were showing. And I think the characters they chose to not include, they did a good job. Like people were wondering like, "Oh, where was Professor X? Where was Magneto? Where was Storm?" I
Hmm.
think it was right that they weren't in the movies because again, like they were kind of sending off the characters that like, didn't quite get as much love
Right.
or really didn't get a chance to like shine or get a chance to actually do anything. Like Storm, she's been like, while they could have done her character better, she's been in every X-Men ensemble movie except for First Class,
Hmm.
just played by a different actress. Same thing with Professor X and Magneto. Like to me, we didn't need to see them in it. So I'm okay that like I like who they chose to be in the movie.
Wait, was she in Days of Future Past?
Storm, yeah,
Is she in like the future?
she's in the future. So do you
Oh,
remember the
okay.
scene where Magneto throws the jet and she
Uh-huh.
blows it up with lightning? She blew
Oh,
up the jet.
okay.
Yeah, she probably had like,
It wasn't in for very long,
yeah,
but
like maybe 2 minutes of screen time, honestly, because she gets killed by a sentinel. But she's in
right.
it and she plays
Okay.
like a role trying to protect them from the future sentinels. So
Gotcha. Oh, okay.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so those were the things I really liked because it was very funny and the cameos I felt like were handled tastefully,
Hmm.
just really well. They were just handled super well. And it's like
Hmm.
when you think about like what this movie is a sequel to, it's like it's a sequel to like so much. Like I don't
Yeah.
I don't know if there's I think like people say like there's a lot of stuff you had to watch before Avengers Endgame. You pretty much have to watch or like at least know about almost every Marvel project to really get Deadpool and Wolverine for it
If you want
all
to
to
get every
come together.
reference, every joke
Yeah,
or everything.
you really have to because it's the entire 20th Century Fox universe essentially.
Hmm.
Um um and like I mean, you could kind of like if you just watch the Deadpool movies and none of the X-Men movies, I think you'll still be okay. But you kind of got to watch Logan. In order to watch Logan, you kind of got to watch all the other Wolverine and X-Men movies, you know.
Hmm.
Um Same thing with and then you also to know the TVA, you kind of got to know Loki. In order to watch Loki, you pretty much have to watch everything that the MCU has put out.
Right.
So it's a very
At least it's not for anything serious. It
yeah.
feels like it's mostly for getting all of the references, or if you want to try to follow along what's happening. Because even I stopped after season one of Loki, and I didn't feel overly lost or anything about like
Oh
the
yeah.
TVA or what they're doing. Or I
Okay.
feel like even just context clues in the show will get you as far as you need to,
Hmm.
as for not feeling totally lost. But yeah, to pick up on everything, there's quite a homework list.
But I think Sean Levy did a great job in balancing that with maybe people who only have seen the first two Deadpool movies and just wanted to see the third one, or
Mhm.
someone who's never seen any Marvel project at all, just to be able to come in and laugh. And like when you see everyone else in the theater laughing because they know how crazy it is to have Wesley Snipes' Blade in there, you can just laugh. Like, you can just laugh. So I think a lot of it, and I think those are the parts that I really enjoyed. To me, the cameos and the humor, um, really hit for me. And those are the main, and that's to me what this entire movie is based off of. Seeing Henry Cavill's Wolverine was really unexpected and really funny. Um, because he was the one smoking the cigar with the bike. Um, and
Mhm.
so that was awesome. So was there anything else that you really enjoyed about the movie that stood out to you?
That's probably it. For as much as I like enjoyed it, there's not like this obviously doesn't have standing power, and I don't think I'll think of this as like in like a top five sense of movies I've
Yeah,
seen this year. But I think in like the smaller realm of like comic book movies this year, I think it might be the top because I'm
oh,
thinking of what else is out.
by far this is the best comic book movie that came out this year
I'm
based on superheroes. Like,
because yeah, Spider-Verse was last year.
yep, Madam Web.
Oh yeah, Madam. Oh,
Yeah,
dude. Honestly, I think I laughed about as much in Madam Web as I did in Deadpool and Wolverine. Obviously, for different
very
reasons.
different reasons. Yeah,
I think Madam Web.
because we
That
got to see that
movie.
together, and I spent like legitimate money on that movie. I contributed to its box office gross. That's something
Uh,
I have to live with for the rest of my life.
you know what? I'm proud of it. I'm proud
Think
of
so?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
happy
no,
I got to be there.
especially because like compared to all the movies that came out this year, um it's like it's easily the best comic book superhero movie.
Mhm,
Um because there are no, I mean, even if there were DC movies, those usually aren't really competition, but there are no DC movies coming out this year. It's the only
mhm.
Marvel movie. And it was, I think, the uh there's gonna be another Venom movie and Craven the Hunter. So
So yeah, probably this.
yeah, this is definitely the best. I mean, I don't know if it cracks my top five for movies this year. Um, because it definitely feels like the idea of this was to just to get people enjoying Marvel movies again. Like when you realize like the point of this, it was not really to, because there's been two things. People have been bored of Marvel because they feel like the lore isn't being driven forward, it's being driven in a bunch of intersecting directions that they can't follow.
Mhm.
And they just, the quality they feel like has gone down and they haven't been able to enjoy going to see a Marvel movie as much anymore. It's just kind of died down.
Mhm.
So I feel like this movie was intended to let's make them enjoy it again.
Right.
And I feel like that was the main thing. It wasn't designed to drive Marvel lore. It was essentially a self-contained story that doesn't really seem like it's going to impact the MCU at all. Which was kind of surprising because like I kind of thought I was kind of expecting a shakeup, but I realized
Yeah.
like after watching the movie, the entire point was just let's just get people enjoying Marvel again. And then I
Right.
think the next movie that's really supposed to push things forward is Captain America Brave New World. And I think releasing the trailer for that before this movie was
Mhm.
good because I think that helped people that were kind of wanting to see the lore get driven more remember that, like, hey, it's going to happen. Like, right
Right.
now, we just want you to enjoy being back and being Marvel, but we are going to drive the lore forward pretty soon coming up. Um, so I guess if those are the things that we enjoyed, are there any low points for you in the movie or things like
Um,
that?
there was just for as like the other half of the for every joke that I laughed at, there was also a joke that I like either didn't, which I wouldn't count as a negative if you don't make me laugh, but there's
Hmm.
some that I was just really disappointed to see. Like it feels like it's just so not my brand of humor that it just like it wasn't just that I didn't laugh or it fell flat. It took me out of it a little bit, out of the fun of it. And so like that. But even then, that's not such a huge deal or a low point for me. It's just
Yeah.
that this just kind of exists as it does, and I'm happy that it's not being anything that it's not. But for me personally, that can only take it so far.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Like some of the jokes may have felt like off color or like just not really like why is this in here? Almost.
Right,
Like it's not
like
funny
it,
enough to just justify it being in here,
right.
you know,
It's
for this
not
kind
like
of joke.
oh man, you gotta include that joke. It's just like, why, dude?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, like it feels like it doesn't really serve a purpose. And I think like when we were in the theater together, I don't think many people were laughing at those jokes either. Like
yeah,
it was just
they
kind of
just
like a okay, moving on. Can we move on?
right.
Yeah. Um, I think for me, like, and as I've like reflected on the movie and as I go see it again, like my only low point gets better, but I think
Mhm,
I just had a hard time like latching on to the story. Um, and I guess like the first thing you have to understand is like this is because like they kind of established it, but like at the end of Loki season two, it's all about how they pretty much reformed the TVA and now they're doing all these good things.
mhm,
So when the movie kind of twisted to make Paradox the bad guy, like he's doing something wrong with this time ripper, it kind of was
mhm,
like, what? And then I kind of had to like reflect on like, okay, there are still like in Loki season two, there was a rogue faction of TVA agents that were
mhm,
literally going out and pruning timelines, which is something they stopped doing in season two that they were doing in season one. And
mhm.
the way Loki season two, it kind of made it seem like, okay, we rounded up the rogue guys. You know what I mean? But um this movie is like, oh, so I guess they didn't round them all up. So like I think if I had understood that at the beginning, I would have liked that a lot more. Um I didn't really get the scene where he like tried out for the Avengers with John Favreau. I think that's
Yeah,
a way to kind of make it like MCU, but I'm like, to me, it's more confusing than it is funny. Like if it's drop dead hilarious, it's like, okay, I don't care if it doesn't make sense, leave it in. But
right.
it wasn't that funny. So
No. And it felt like it went on for too long.
yeah, and
Like,
I felt
okay, we get
confused.
it.
Yeah, and it's like I guess he used that time travel device to go to the and then like the whole storyline behind like I get so and I guess in the trailers they didn't want it to seem like Deadpool was they didn't want it to seem like the TVA like it's part of the misdirect because they wanted the TVAs to be the good guys. Um but to have the whole storyline where Paradox is like I'm going to destroy your timeline, but I'm
Hmm.
going to save you, to me didn't really make sense or fit with his evil character because it's like just destroy the whole timeline if that's what you want. Like to me it would have made more sense if Deadpool was just arrested for messing with time like he did at the end of Deadpool 2 by the
Yeah.
TVA, overhears they're going to destroy this timeline and then decides to go do all that stuff. But like for him to be like, yeah, I'm just going to put you in another world, it's like what part, like if you've been watching Deadpool and watching him all his life and seeing how close he is to all these people, you have to be an idiot to just think that, yes, I'm just going to put him in another timeline because I think he's worthy of saving and he's going to go along with this.
Yeah.
I can't, there's no like rationale I can really
Right.
get for it. So it's just kind of,
It's very
um,
contrived.
mhm.
It feels very forced, and
Yeah,
there doesn't feel to be like a reason behind it. And it feels like there's an even funnier or more like in
right.
character way to get you to that point anyway.
Right. Like
It's
I'm
like,
like you could have leaned into the like to me like it's almost like I'm not gonna say like it's worse when I know you had another option to go, but it's like you kind of did just arrest him and just let him
mhm,
over here and make it funny because like you could easily without having to like create almost like a mental gymnastic hurdle. And then
mhm.
what was they didn't go into it very much, which is why I'm glad. And I am praying they drop it. But people think that it's going to become like a new storyline coming up. The idea of anchor beings. And I know it's been something that's been mentioned in the comics before, and just because it's from the comics, I still think it's stupid. I
Mm-hmm.
can't I can't rationalize the idea that one being is responsible for the destruction of the universe if they die. There are
Mm-hmm.
so many ways that just doesn't, like, you could say that like one being is responsible for saving the earth, and that's, like kind of like a future event, and if they're not there to save it, kind of like how Tony Stark ended up killing Thanos. Like if Tony Stark had died before that, he wouldn't have been there to kill Thanos, and maybe everything would have fallen apart. Like you can kind of like, you got to give me a reason. You can't just say because this person doesn't exist, your entire universe is going to decay and get destroyed, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like people die. Like, does every universe have an anchor being? Like, what happens when that person inevitably dies? Because everybody dies. Like,
Right.
that doesn't make sense. And also, how did the universe exist before they were born?
Before them, how do you get to
Because
that? Right.
there's
It.
so many, and again, it's not like a, in Deadpool and Wolverine, like you can kind of like, they didn't even, like they can't like, that's kind of the basis for the whole movie, why he has to go find another Logan. And then they don't really address anchor beings at all. So I really hope it was just a thing for this movie, because I feel like a more serious movie could easily be ruined by this concept, because the concept doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So
And it doesn't even feel like it was necessary. Like you don't need that to get Loki to or to get Deadpool and Wolverine to where they are.
yeah, I
It's
think
just like
you
as a
easily.
concept, like you're parroting like a lot of the serious comic book movies of
Mm-hmm.
times past, and yet it also at the same breath does a lot of the pitfalls of
Right.
things like from the Fox era. And in that way, it's like it's very like, oh, it's accurate. You're doing it,
Right.
but why?
And like Deadpool made fun of so many like Marvel tropes in the film. I'm almost like I feel like I would have been okay if he just made fun of this trope too. Like
Hmm.
if Paradox is explained to him like, yes, anchor beings. And Deadpool's like, wait, so like one being is responsible for the death of an entire universe? What
Right.
happens when they die of natural causes? What happens before they're born? Like if he just
Hmm.
makes fun of it and Paradox is like, I don't know.
I don't
Like
know.
I
Then
would have been
like,
okay, because that would have been
cool,
funny.
because then
That
it's
would
in
have
on the
been
joke.
hilarious, right? Yeah, that's in on the joke. It's okay if it doesn't make sense if you make it fun. But that was like the most serious point of the entire movie. That was like the only serious part, where he's like, yeah, if you lose this anchor being, your whole universe. And he's like, oh, I gotta go. And it's also like, how do you know that that Wolverine wasn't the anchor point for his universe? So is
Right.
his universe gonna decay now because he's not in it? It's it's
It's a whole can of
it's a
worms
whole can of worms, and
after.
it's like, please, Marvel, just drop that. Have Deadpool make a joke about how stupid it was when you put him in Secret Wars, and just like, people are theorizing that the Avengers are gonna go seek out Tony Stark because they think that he's the anchor point for their universe, and they're gonna bring in Robert Downey Jr., who they think is Tony Stark, but he's actually Victor Von Doom,
It's
and he's gonna pretend to be. And I'm like, this is why the concept makes no sense. Do not, please,
man.
screenwriters, do not do that. People will boycott the movie. The idea of an anchor being, it was in the comics. I get it. And usually there is no person who is more like stay comic faithful than me. But even I can admit when some crap in comics don't make no sense.
Hmm.
Anchor beings do not make sense.
They are
Please,
dumb.
they are dumb. And that's why, like, to have a dumb concept in like a funny, dumb movie, it's okay. Like I said, I would have preferred it. It probably wouldn't even be a low point for me if Deadpool had acknowledged how stupid it was. Cause it's like,
Right. Then it would just be another moment.
yeah, it's like someone's got to realize this. Even if it was the entire plot of your movie to bring Wolverine into the Fox universe, and
Hmm.
you still went with it, and just having Deadpool make fun even while he's digging up Logan and be like, I've been thinking, like, how does this like, or like while he's beating up the TVA agents, like, hey guys, killing them with the bones. Hey, what happens when, other people, other anchor beings just die, like of natural causes? Because, not all of us are immortal.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know the implicate, or if they like explain that, like I just wanted an explanation of like, hey, because Logan's not in your timeline, there's no one who can defend the Earth from like apocalypse, and he ends up blowing
Hmm.
everything up. That's
Hmm.
fine. That's fine. And be like, okay, we need to go get another Wolverine because maybe he's the only one with the regenerative healing factor that can help us defeat him. So we go take him from another universe. That would have worked perfectly fine. The anchor
Right.
beings idea to me just feels lazy and contrived. And it's like, hey, we can't come up with a good reason for a Wolverine. It's like, let's just say the universe is going to die without him.
Hmm.
So yeah, it doesn't. But like I said, because I
Doesn't.
know after the movie, I was like, why are there? I was really confused about like the lore because I'm like, there shouldn't be people in the void right now because the TVA stopped pruning people. And then
Right.
once I kind of accepted, like once you kind of get to the end, they kind of established that like it was just a rogue faction, but they don't
Right.
really, it's not as like clear, I guess, is that kind of thing.
Hmm.
You kind of have to think about it a little bit. And then, because that was my biggest point after the whole thing.
Hmm.
But it kind of makes sense more after. Because, like in Loki, they never destroyed Eliath. He still exists in the void. And if there are some rogue agents out there, which there were in Loki season 2, it does make sense. So that kind of helped my low point. So right now, the lowest one is just please drop the anchor beings. You could drop it in a funny way, but just
Hmm.
drop it. Do not make it the plot of Avengers Doomsday. It will be
Or
the
ignore it.
Avenger movies. Or just
Just
ignore it.
don't. Just don't
Yeah,
acknowledge it.
that's
That's
fine too.
Deadpool's thing.
Yeah,
Just leave it. Leave it there.
just ignore it. Yeah, that's fine too. So but overall, great time at the movies. Great time. Loved it. Are there any more low points or closing thoughts or anything like that for you on Deadpool and Wolverine?
No, it was just. It was fun,
Yeah.
and I think that's all the movie was trying to be.
Hmm.
And so I feel like it was a big success.
Yeah. And I feel like I don't know, like it had the right amount of heart because like I feel like I had as much fun with this movie as I did with like the Marvels when I saw it in theaters. This one was a little funnier because the Marvels still had, a lot of the Marvel like kind of tongue-in-cheek humor. Um but like that one it wasn't really I don't know, just the way the marketing kind of played out, like it felt like like we needed Deadpool and Wolverine because of the Marvels. When reality is, I had just as much fun seeing both of them in theaters. I thoroughly enjoyed watching both of them. So hopefully, this will be. I don't know, like to me, like when people say like Marvel is in a slump or something like that, like I could kind of understand how like some of the
Hmm.
movies box office returns haven't been that high. But as you mentioned
Hmm.
before, like they've made so much money, they have enough to cover for those losses. So like, and Deadpool and Wolverine has now crossed $1 billion. It has easily surpassed its budget and then some. Even after, Ryan Reynolds gets rich off of his take from the amount of it, they'll still have enough to cover some
Hmm.
of the other losses. So I think Marvel's fine and alive and kicking. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed Deadpool. So Deadpool and Wolverine. So leave your thoughts. Let us know what you
Yeah.
thought. Um, the scene where he like where he's talking, I just remembered another funny scene where he's like talking in the car to the kids.
Uh-huh.
I can't even say it on the podcast.
Oh yeah. Oh
He's
yeah.
just
Yeah.
so
At the
yeah,
beginning.
yeah. That's just that was really funny. So anyway,
Well,
leave us
let
your
us know
thoughts.
your favorite bit.
Yeah, let us
What
know
landed for
your
you?
favorite joke, favorite bit, and if something didn't land for you, let us know that too. Let us know
Mhm.
everything that you felt while watching this movie, and we will see you next time.
Until then.